So, in this module we will take a look at how the input and output can be redirected, as well as take a look at pipes. So, when any command is run, we always see the output of the command given in your window. So, if you are basically running in a terminal window, you always see the output of the command coming out in the same window in which you have actually run the command. Now, if you have a requirement that this terminal output, which is referred technically as a standard output, needs to be sort of redirected to another location, that is when we typically call them as a redirection, right. So, in the Linux world, we actually use this particular symbol, the greater than symbol, to redirect the contents or redirect the command output to another file. And whenever we want the contents of the file not to be getting lost, but the output to be appended to the end of the file, we actually make use of the double greater than symbol. So, we will see this with an example here to get a better idea. Now, if I say that I want to run the output of this command, it is basically going to be displayed on my standard output, that is basically, as we were discussing, it is the same window on which I am running the command as well. Now, if I want to redirect the output of this command, not to put it onto my standard output, but to place it in another file, then I could actually give the location of the file in which I would like to have the output redirected. Now, if I say in this manner that I want a file readme to be created under /tmp, and I want to have the output of this particular command in this particular file name, I just specify it like this, right. Now, if you see the contents of this file, you will find that it had got created with whatever was the output of this particular command. So, output of this command was this, because of this redirection it had actually got created here. Now, if I try to do something else, now if I say ls greater than the same file name, right. So, whatever was the file name that I had given earlier, we are giving the same file name here. What is actually going to happen right now is the original contents of the file will be lost. Now, if you see the contents of this particular file, you will find that the previous contents had got lost, right. So, whatever were the contents that I had here, they are no more available because of the fact that we had used this particular redirection operation. Now, on the other hand, if I have used this appending redirection operation, you will find that the old contents of the file is retained, and the contents of the output of this particular command is sort of getting appended at the end of the file name. Now, this output has run, and as we have been seeing in the first example, the contents would have actually gone into this file, and now if I see this particular file, you have the contents available at the end without the original contents that was there getting lost, right. So, that is how the simple greater than and the simple double greater than actually works in redirecting the output to a different file. Now, look at this some very common examples. So, we are basically saying that I want to list the contents of tilde Saddam. So, in the previous module we had actually seen this to be referring to the home directory of this user called Saddam, and then /star. So, /star again the regular expression standing for 0 or more. So, used in this context will represent all the files that is actually available in the home directory of this particular user Saddam, redirected to a file. What file, where which location is that? It is basically the home directory of this user called GWB. Under that home directory, it will be the file name called this particular name. So, the contents, the file, the directory contents of tilde Saddam will be getting redirected and stored in a file in the location of this particular GWB's home directory in a file name called weapons_mass_destruction.txt, right. So, the next usage, as I was just showing you right now, I am just trying to cat this file, display the contents of this file and then redirect it to another file with this name. So, essentially if you closely observe, right, the first command, the cat that we are seeing here is actually equivalent to the CP command that we saw in the previous module, because what is happening in this particular command is that I am trying to display the contents of this file, but instead of displaying it onto my terminal, I am directing my shell to redirect the output to this file name. So, essentially another way of putting the same getting the same functionality is that I can say CP of this particular file name to this particular file name, right. And as we are seeing in the example that I demonstrated right now, the contents of this particular file will be getting completely lost and overwritten whenever we use the simple redirection, whereas when we use this appending redirection, the contents will be stored, whatever is available will be continuing to be available, but the output of this command will be sort of appended to the existing content instead of completely overwriting that, right. Now, I could also have something like this: echo is a command in my shell which just tries to echo whatever is given as an argument to it, right. So, if I say echo readme no such file or directory and then redirect it to another file name, it will basically take whatever has been asked to echo here into this particular file name, right. Now, we will see this as an example for you to understand it more clearly. So, if I say echo readme no such file or directory, redirect it to readme, right, and if I say cat readme now, it will display that readme no such file or directory. Now, the slight confusion that will be arising in this particular example is that we would not know whether the system is giving you an error message saying that this particular file readme is not available, or there is a file called readme and the contents of that readme is basically this, right. So, in that way, depending on what you are trying to do, you will basically be getting the appropriate output redirected into the file name that is actually specified after the redirection symbol, either the greater than symbol or the double greater than symbol. Now, similarly, like I redirect my standard output, there is something called as a standard input. The standard input is the device through which the input is expected to be fed into my application or the command that I am trying to execute. So, for almost all the commands that we will come across in our normal day to day usage, you will find that the standard input is basically by my keyboard, from which I basically give the text that I want to be supplying to my command for it to work on and then give me the standard output. Now, sort as a command that we saw in one of the previous modules basically tries to sort the given data in a file. If I do not specify the file, sort tries to take the input from the standard input, right. So, if I say sort and then tell Windows and Linux as the two words that I want to give, and then finally I press Ctrl D. Now, how I press Ctrl D is I hold the control key in my keyboard, at the same time with another finger I press the letter D, and that is what we typically mean by saying I press Ctrl D here. Ctrl D in Unix is always the default end of file character. So, with this Ctrl D pressing, I am signaling to my sort command that I have given whatever input I want to give to you to work on and asking it to sort the given input, after which it will display the given contents in a sorted order, right. So, this is one example of a command where it accepts standard input. The standard input by default is my keyboard, but I could also redirect the standard input with this lesser than symbol that is used, right. So, if I have the contents that I want to sort in a file, and if I use this lesser than symbol here, what is essentially meaning is that I will be able to take the contents of this particular file and sort the contents which is available in the file as an input into the sort command, and the sorted contents will now be displayed on the standard output. Now, if I want to give the standard output, the sorted contents that is coming in the standard output to another file, I can subsequently do a standard output redirection here in the same command line with the greater than symbol, and then give a different file name, right. Now, what will then happen is that the contents will be read from this file, and because the standard input redirection is used, the contents of this file will be given as an input to the sort instead of from the keyboard, and because if I use the standard output here subsequently after that, whatever is the sorted contents of this particular file will now be getting redirected into whatever file name we give after the standard output redirection. So, in that way I will be able to make use in a single command line to make use of both input and output redirection, which Linux very conveniently for us supports. Now, coming into the pipes, so we did actually see the definition of a pipe in one of our earlier modules. So, Unix pipes are very useful to redirect the standard output of a command as a standard input of another command. So, we actually make use of this symbol for specifying the pipe command. So, what is actually happening in this particular case is we are saying cat star.log. As we know, this will basically display the contents of all file names which are ending with .log, but because of the fact that the pipe is used, and when you use a pipe the output has to be fed into the pipe, the default standard output will not be getting the contents in this particular case, but that output will be going into the pipe, and this output will now become the input for this command. So, grep -i error. So, this command will basically, as we have seen before in our earlier module, the grep command with the -i option will search for the pattern error in a case insensitive manner, and all the lines that has this pattern error will now be getting piped into the third command in the command line, which is the sort command. So, it will sort all the lines that has the pattern error in a case insensitive manner in all the files that is actually ending with .log. So, if you look at this with a single command line, by using the pipe symbol, we have been able to actually run a very powerful utility that is required for us, wherein we wanted to get a sorted list of all lines which has the pattern error in a case insensitive manner in all the files that is actually ending with .log. So, that is basically the power of the pipes in Unix. So, look at the next example. So, we are saying grep -ri error in dot. So, in the current directory, dot as we know stands for the current directory. So, in the current directory, recursively and in a case insensitive manner search for the pattern error, and all those lines in which you find the pattern error, pipe it to grep -v ignored. So, -v we also saw that is basically standing for the reverse behavior of the grep, wherein I will have the pattern that is given should not be present in the lines that I am basically selecting for displaying here. So, what this essentially will give is it will display all the lines which does not have the pattern called ignored, and then that will be piped into the sort -u option, wherein it will give me all the unique lines in that particular output, and the entire thing will now be redirected into a file called serious_errors.log. Now, this particular character, the backslash in Unix, is what is called as a escape character. So, the escape character is usually given whenever we do not want the shell to interpret the next character that we are going to give in a default special manner, right. Now, why we use this escape character in this particular sequence is that we actually have a very long command line that we are giving because of so many pipe symbols that we are using, because of which it will sort of wrap around into the next line. Now, if you use the escape character and then press the enter key, the enter key will not be interpreted by the shell as the end of my command line, but will be interpreted as a normal literal new line character, because of which it will now give me a command continuation character at the next line, in which I am saying that I am going to be displaying redirecting the output into this particular file. So, essentially what is this command going to do? It is now going to have all lines which is actually having the pattern error in a case insensitive manner in all the files that is currently available in my current working directory, but those lines will not be having the pattern called ignored, and all those lines will be sorted, and only unique lines in the sorted lines among the sorted lines will be getting redirected into this particular file called serious_errors.log. So, likewise if you look at it, you will be able to understand how pipes are so powerful for enabling multiple commands to be executed, especially commands that are dependent on the output of the previous command, because of which it is going to be behaving in a different manner and it is going to give us a different output. Likewise, we could actually sort of serialize the execution of different commands with the pipe symbols, especially the related commands and also the dependent commands, in such a way that we finally get the output whatever we require even after different commands have actually processed the outputs in a serialized fashion. So, we will find as you keep practicing more and more commands and writing shell scripts subsequently, that pipes is actually one of the most powerful features that is very commonly used by administrators typically. So, there is a standard error also that is actually available, in which all the error messages are expected to be getting redirected by the application. So, if I for example want to give out an error message, I am expected not to send it out to my standard output, but to send it to my standard error. So, the main reason for having the standard error different as compared to a standard output is that if I have a standard error separately, I will be able to process all the error messages in an independent manner as compared to all the standard output messages that would be typically coming in as part of my standard output, right. So, even though the default location for both my standard output and standard error is my terminal window, because of the fact that Unix is actually treating standard error as a different file, I will be able to selectively redirect the content of the standard error to a different location, right. So, as given in this example. So, we are basically saying here that I want to display the contents of F1, F2 and no file. I do not want to display it in the standard output, but I want the contents to be displayed onto this file, redirected to this file, because we have used a standard output redirection here. On the other hand, if there was any error that has actually happened as part of this execution of the command, we want those error messages to go into this particular file, right. So, that is the reason why we are using a 2 greater than or a 2 double greater than also could be used, wherein whether we want to just write the contents standard error contents, or we want to append the contents into the given file name, appropriately we can either use 2 greater than or 2 double greater than respectively, right. So, in that way the number 2 is actually used in this particular command line to denote that we are trying to redirect the standard error to a different location as compared to the redirection of the standard output. Thank you.